Andrea Uten and all of your team here at the American Heart Association, thank you for your dogged persistence and leadership in pursuing this Carol Barr Fund. And it's exciting because this is obviously a labor of love, but it's a two-pronged effort. One is the philanthropic private Carol Barr Fund at the American Heart Association, which is what we're doing here. And thanks to the generosity of the people in this room, we've fully funded one part of this Carol Barr Fund, which will fund STEM scholarships for young women from Kentucky to go into fields that can one day contribute to finding treatments and cures for diseases like valvular heart disease. The other piece is the research that I want to talk about, and we've got two excellent and outstanding guests. We're going to talk about the need for research in valvular heart disease, specifically mitral valve prolapse, which took Carol too young.
The challenge of biomedical research is really that we've got an advanced understanding of a complex human body, which has got about 40 trillion cells in it, and thousands of chemicals within each of those cells, to improve and save lives by generating information that facilitates diagnosis, prevention, and curing of disease. So this is a very broad, difficult topic in which you probably always hear the eureka moments, but bluntly, this is really needing everyone's effort with the generosity to start chipping away at this to really start getting advances. So it's a very protracted process generally. So basically AHA is the biggest non-profit in the cardiovascular world, both cardiovascular and stroke. They've put nearly $5 billion into research over the years, and they usually have about 800, 850 awards a year, and it's approximately 2,000 awards. So this is a very substantial structure, and actually there's 14 Nobel Prize winners that at some phase of their career were supported by the American Heart Association.
But this right here is our mitral valve. And when we say mitral valve prolapse, you have an elongation, generally developmentally and even embryologically, such that these leaflets are what we call more floppy. When you have that floppy valve and it's maybe longer, when you have a lot of blood pressure that's being pumped one direction through the heart, these valves are supposed to close with a very close and tight approximation to keep that blood like a closed door going the way it's supposed to go. But if you don't, and those valve leaflets are not a tight seal, you can have backflow of blood that leaks backwards into the atrium instead of going down into the ventricle and then out into the aorta to the rest of the heart. That is basically causing the heart to work double hard, right? Because it's already pumped it once, and now instead of going this way, some of it's coming back up, and your heart's pumping it a second time. So double the work. It's interesting with different syndromes. Sometimes people will think, oh, that's so unfortunate. I'm sorry you have to experience, that type of suffering, which is true, except that it can save lives. Because with Marfan syndrome, you have other features other than the aorta and the valve that helps you or your family know that there's a problem, right? There's a syndrome because there's multiple manifestations as a consequence of that inherent mutation. And I'm going to show you this picture. So this little girl has Marfan syndrome. And she went to see the doctor. Well, her parents took her because they said, look, she's really flexible. She can do this weird thing where she puts her foot behind her back and hooks it on the front of her hip. Well, that little girl is me. It's possible that Carol doesn't even have one of these gene mutations. Because with a lot of my patients, I started the aortopathy clinic at the University of Kentucky. I get genetic testing for aortic disease. They clearly have familial aortic disease. And I say, you have a mutation. It's just in a gene that we've never discovered. We don't know where to look yet. The needle in the haystack, we're not even in the right haystack. I made a research observation from my mice with Marfan syndrome. Wouldn't have been possible or as easy to know with zebrafish, which is this. There is a medicine already on the market. It's a common blood pressure medicine that is effective in preventing aortic growth in people with Marfan syndrome. It's called losartan, and I gave this medicine to my mice with Marfan syndrome, 50% of which were dying by the age of 3 months. When I gave them the losartan, we had 100% survival. A day of life, 140. So this is profoundly effective, okay? So if we could just prevent one surgery in these 16,000 people in the United States, we would save the US healthcare system $3.7 trillion. Right now, Alan and I have filed a patent, and we're trying to get this technology to market, but it is, you might think, wow, you found the answer. And what I've realized is that the journey has just begun. It is highly unlikely that this will probably ever get to market. That I thought we made this groundbreaking discovery and we found the mechanism, and that's just a fraction of the challenge of actually getting a therapy to a patient. It is so difficult for a physician to get funding from NIH that if there's not mechanisms like the scholarships, the grants that were discussed that the AOJ offers, they just say, go back to clinic. You're too valuable in the clinic to be wasting time asking questions in the lab. So every penny, I can't tell you, even one of the, Dr. Newman, who's a physician who's in charge of UK healthcare, his very first grant as a physician scientist was from the American Heart Association. If he hadn't gotten that, he probably wants to become a researcher, because it's just so tough and competitive sometimes to get funding from NIH.
Thanks for sharing your story. And yes, you are valuable to be in clinic and practicing and treating patients, but you are extremely valuable to be in the research lab. And that's where we want you. And that's really why we are endeavoring on this project. And what we're asking you all to consider today is to continue to be generous. All of you have been with the American Heart Association component, the Carol Barr Fund. That's the philanthropic side of this. For researchers who can't get the NIH grants, which are very competitive and very difficult, to supplement that on the private side with American Heart Association grants, collaborative grants, where we can look into the genetics, we can look into the causes, we can come up with better diagnostic tools to help save lives. That's the difference we are trying to make, and we know we can by fully funding the Carol Barr Fund.